Welcome to Cinematic Breakdown. This is our very first episode, and for it, we will be analyzing a scene from There Will Be Blood by Paul Thomas Anderson. For any of you out there who have yet to see this film, that's alright, there will be no spoilers. But before we begin, let's just take a moment to watch the scene.
Mr. Plainview?
Yes?
Are you Daniel Plainview?
Yes? What can I do for you?
You look for oil.
That's right.
What do you pay for a place that has it?
Well, it depends.
What does it depend on?
On a lot of things.
If I told you I knew a place that had oil where land could be bought cheaply, what do you think that would be worth?
Oh, I think that, you should let me know what you know, and then we'll try and work something out.
Can I sit down?
Please.
What church do you belong to?
I enjoy all faiths. I don't belong to one church in particular. I like them all. I like everything. Where are you from?
That would be telling you. That's what I want to sell you.
What are you doing in Signal Hill?
We have oil and it seeps through the ground. Do you want to pay me to know
Well,
where
just
it
because
is?
there's something on the ground doesn't mean there's anything beneath it.
Why did Standard Oil buy up land?
Isn't it California?
Maybe.
How much land they buy?
I'd like it better if you didn't think I was stupid.
Why'd you come to me?
You just brought this well in.
That's right.
Yes, so just give me $500 in cash right now and I'll tell you where it is.
I'll tell you what I'll do, son. I'll give you $100 now, and if it proves to be a promising lease, then I'll give you a $1,000 bonus.
$600.
Just tell me one thing to help me decide. What else have you got up there? What do you grow?
We have a big ranch, but it's mostly rocks. You can plant things, nothing will grow but weeds. What makes you think it's up?
Is there sulfur around or alkali deposits?
Alkali nearby. I don't know sulfur. Is that your son?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Who are you?
I'm Fletcher Hamilton. Nice to meet you, son. What's your name?
What do you do?
I work with Mr. Plainview.
Here's $500, son. You tell me something worth hearing. This money's yours.
I come from a town called Little Boston in Isabella County. This is us here. Spur Station here at Little Boston. The Sunday Ranch is what you're looking for. There's a sheep trail that takes you there. It's a mile out of town, headed west, not far. Just through a small pass here near the base of the hills. You'll pass a church and just follow the sheep trail.
Where's Standard buying up?
Here and here.
And your family name is Sunday, yes?
That's right.
How many is in your family?
My father and mother and sisters and my brother Eli.
How many sisters do you have?
2.
What's your name?
Paul.
Does any of your family know about the oil that you say is there?
I don't know. My uncle always said there was oil there, but I don't know what they heard or what they think.
What do you grow?
It's goats. It's a goat farm. I told you, nothing grows but weeds.
Is there water?
It's salty. You drill a well, it's hard not to get salt water. The oil is there. I'm telling you. I want to go now, so...
Oh, you can stay tonight.
No, I want to go now. I want to leave.
Listen, Paul. If I travel all the way up there and I find that you've been lying to me, I'm going to find you and I'm going to take more than my money back. Is that all right with you?
Yes, sir.
All right, then.
Nice luck to you. God bless.
And to you, young man.
Alright, now that we've seen that, let's take it back to the beginning for our first topic, introduction of characters. Introductions are one of the most important aspects of a scene. The way one introduces characters sets up how we think about that character for the duration of the story. Now, within this one scene, 4 different types of introductions are employed. The first is your standard 101 introduction. We have this character here entering through a doorway that the camera's been looking at. Nothing special or unusual about it. Next, we have the reintroduction. This is when a character we already know is introduced to us a second time. This can be used for many reasons and in the name of many effects. It can double down on showing them to us in a different light, it can double down on showing them to us in the same light, or, in this case, it can double down on the importance of the introduction of another character. Either way, it is used to emphasize importance. Even though we've never seen this character before, and a number of one-time characters have already been introduced, we already know that this one is different. Because they reintroduce the main character, we instantly understand that this other character holds great importance. The third type of introduction is the reveal. For possibly the most famous reveal, the introduction of Mr. Blonde in Reservoir Dogs, to the more subtle one here, the camera does nothing to acknowledge that there is another character in play. You think that there are only these two, but then the blocking adjusts slightly, or it shows us that someone else has been here the whole time. It's a fantastic way to kick the audience in a very subtle manner. I'll talk further about this in the next section, but for now, I'll just leave it here and move on to the fourth type of introduction, the surprise. The difference between this and the reveal is the lasting nature of the character. Even though we don't see him, the man on the right was there the whole time. The young boy, however, pops up out of nowhere, locking the visitor in, surrounding him. This lack of permanence and the ability to just appear could be said to be a subset of the reveal, but it is different enough to be noteworthy. The man on the right is as steady as a rock, dependable, always by the main character's side, even when we don't see him. The young boy is not. He's here, then he's gone, then he's back again, and no one knows what he's up to while he's away or when he'll return. These statements apply to these characters throughout the film, but are set, cemented in stone, via nothing more than how they are introduced. As an aside, in this instance, this also qualifies as a reintroduction, which only serves to double down the importance of these characteristics in the boy. Now that that's been covered, although only briefly, let's move on to the next topic, blocking. Blocking, for those who don't know, is simply the placement of characters and objects within the frame, what they block or do not block. These simple things can greatly alter perceptions, opinions, and aesthetics. Also, since a large part of blocking is where you put the camera, I will include my section on camera movement within this section here. In this scene, the first thing we see is the hat being removed through the doorway. This is a minor detail, but it speaks volumes. To begin, the blocking here is the wall in front of the character removing the hat, which acts as a precursor to the character's introduction. This small, simple thing tells us one great big thing that we know for sure before we even see the character's face. Whoever it is, they are polite and professional. If the character had been in full frame when they did this, it wouldn't have carried so much weight. But by isolating the action through blocking, the move is highlighted, and so are the repercussions of it. Next, the character steps through the door and into frame. It's a medium close shot with him standing in the left third, looking at something off past the right side of the frame. Behind him is the wall with gears and chains and other assorted items to provide a full, deep, and textured background. In the opposite corner, there is a lone worker, clearly an extra, surrounded by nothing. Not even a blank background, nothing. These two create a contrast that adds to the idea that they exist in two different worlds. The extra has nothing, while the character has something. It may not be much, but in terms of cinema, all that texture creates a full frame of information and detail, which is highlighted by the lack of all this on the other half of the frame. The camera follows him as he walks, never cutting away, straight through to the next shot, which is the opposite doorway into the office. Here, we see the main character at his desk, and the silhouette of the visitor. The use of negative space on the right and left sides of the frame, combined with the abundance of positive space in the center, create the idea that the main character exists peacefully and comfortably with his own world, which is within the larger world of darkness that surrounds him. He sits casually, center frame, the focal point of the entire image, completely stealing the scene from the visitor, who up until then had been center frame and focal point, but now is relegated to the side, practically off screen and standing as a silhouette, only his outline there to remind us that he even exists. A second purpose for his silhouette is that it allows him to become one with the wall and block out the man on the right. Mentally speaking, we've been looking into this room, uncut from the same angle. So the fact that as the visitor sits down, we find a new character sitting right where we thought there was no one seems almost magical. Before this, though, the camera continues to stay, not cutting away. Instead, it slowly pushes in, getting closer. This causes the visitor to get more and more out of frame, while the main character gets larger and more in charge. The next setup is that of the three-shot. It could be argued that the main character owns the left half of the frame, while the man on the right and the visitor share the right half. Or it could be said that the main character and the man on the right own the entire frame, each being the center of their own half, while the visitor is squeezed into the corner of the frame furthest from the one with real power. Either way, it speaks volumes about the power, influence, and importance of the three in this frame. The main character has it, the man on the right shares it, and the visitor wants it. It's obvious. As they speak, the camera moves forward, causing the blocking to completely rearrange. The visitor becomes larger, taking up more of the frame, while the other two shrink by comparison. The man on the right hasn't moved much, but now he's fully sharing the right side of the frame as an equal, as opposed to owning it and willingly sharing a corner of it out of curiosity. Simultaneously, the main character transitions from center frame and in control of the whole left side to having his back put up against the edge of frame and being at eye level with the visitor, instead of looking down on him as he had been. The power exchange has changed. The next frame is that of a two-shot, followed by a close-up profile. The main character leaves the frame completely, laughing as he does. This shows us that although he's losing power, it's only temporary, and he's okay with that. Following suit, the man on the right slowly moves out of frame as the camera rotates around the focal point of the visitor. He's not as happy about it as the main character, but he goes along without complaint. And now, the visitor is in full control of the frame. And if you'll notice, it's a medium to close profile shot with him in the right third, looking past the edge of frame to the main character, the literal exact opposite of the frame with which he began. The character has come a full 180. He began as the focal point, entered a world he knew nothing about, but was in control of the bit he had, has control taken from him by the man that ruled that world, and now has his control back. And the framing and blocking all tell this story, reinforcing all of it. This is where the camera cuts for the first time, right back to the main character, putting him in control of his frame, in the left third, and looking more or less at the camera itself. This is standard framing for conversations, nothing all that special about it, but it's not done for its own sake. It's a trick. By cutting to this shot, it allows them to cut to the next one without question. To go right from the previous shot to the one after this would be strange and would hurt the flow of the scene. They needed something to cut away to that would allow the conversation to feel natural and normal and not unusual in any way. And so, to continue rotation around the visitor, as the camera had been doing, also would have ended with the same framing, but it wouldn't have worked because the movement would have been without motivation, which means people would be questioning, why is the camera moving? Which means they'd be expecting a reveal. And so in order to keep those expectations away and surprise people, you don't do a non-motivated camera movement, you cut. Then you cut back to the angle you want. The pushing forward and rotating around him worked in the beginning, because getting the other characters out added to the power exchange and dynamics. Continuing to move after they are gone would have only given away the secret that there's someone further to the right waiting to be seen. By cutting it, it behaves as we expected it to, and therefore allows it to set us up for something we don't expect. Cutting to this gives the film permission to cut to this, and that is the angle we need to introduce the boy. The introduction of the boy affects many things. Firstly, if you look back at the previous framing, you'll see the main character is allotted more of the frame than the visitor, and while they are each in each other's frames, there is far more of the main character in the visitor's framing than vice versa. This, combined with the introduction of the boy, tells us something very important. The visitor is not only back on the defensive, but he's more outnumbered than we, or even he himself, thought he was. And he's surrounded to boot. The boy coming up from the bottom corner of the frame may only allow him a small amount of power in the shot, but it does allow him power, and it's just another bit that the visitor loses. From here, there's a transition to a more standard editing and framing techniques. The points have been made, and everyone understands the dynamics of the scene. It doesn't take much for reinforcing to become beating a dead horse, and so it stops before it does this, letting the characters become comfortable in a stable, unchanging framework until part 1 of the scene plays out and part 2 begins. The transition between these two parts should be obvious. In this setup, we begin back from them as they all loom over a map. As the camera pushes forwards, the visitor defends and explains himself while being watched and questioned from all sides, and earning more space within the frame as he does. The main character and the boy sandwich the group, maintaining control of the scene as a team. The associate watches from the background, visible through the space between the visitor and the main character. This puts the visitor more or less where we left him, surrounded on all sides, sewn over his shoulder, sharing a piece of the main stage and all the power that comes with it, but not allotted what he feels is a fair share. At the end, the visitor and main character stand as equals, with the same portion of the frame and the boy and the associate holding less, relegated to the sides and back as observers. At one point, the main character takes an aggressive stance and centers himself in the frame, temporarily owning it as he tries to intimidate the visitor. The visitor doesn't move. This shows his stability, and the main character backs down and returns to his side of the frame. With all things balanced and equal, the visitor takes this moment to exit the frame on his own terms and leave the other characters to watch him go. Alright, now that we've covered that, let's rewind back to the beginning and take a look at something completely different. Lighting. Lighting is about a lot more than just helping you to see stuff. It creates mood, atmosphere, but it also goes far beyond that. Instead of going into a vague diatribe about lighting in general, let's just get to the lighting of this particular scene. In the opening shot, the lighting is easy enough to describe. The frame has been split in two, one light and the other dark. The left side, the side in which the visitor stands, is well lit. Not brightly, but we can clearly see everything worth seeing about the character himself and the area where he stands. I already talked about the difference between these two halves of the frame, so I'm not going to annoy you by repeating myself about it. I will simply summarize it in terms of lighting as opposed to in terms of blocking, which is how it was originally described. First, the visitor is surrounded by light, while the other half of the frame is obscured by darkness. But his attention is not in his own world or light. It's through the other half of the frame, through the world of the darkness, towards something past the edge of the frame. This creates a sense that, although he may exist in a world of light, he's standing on the precipice, looking into blackness, which, since he's looking at the main character, says a lot. The little light in the top right does very little other than to simply bring balance to the frame and create a contrast within the dark half of the frame that only serves to remind us of just how dark that side really is. The next lighting setup of importance is this one here. We can see through the door to the main character inside. His key light is coming off from the right, while he only has a moderate fill light, supposedly at least, coming from the lamp on the left. Outside of the room is nearly completely unlit, creating a frame within a frame. If you look at the shadows on the wall behind him, you can see that they're actually the shadows of the rope and machinery moving around just outside his window. Many of you may also notice that he's completely devoid of backlight. He's well lit from the right, and well enough not to be covered in shadows from the left, but from behind, there's nothing. Because of this, it's kind of hard to tell where he ends and the wall behind him begins. They're both just dark wells of blackness that mesh together. Textbookily speaking, this is a flaw. An amateur-grade flaw at that. The question we have to ask, though, does this detract from the scene? If not, then we move along. And if so, then keep that in mind when you're out shooting on something yourself. If you look at the following setup, you'll see what I mean about the difference backlighting can make. Here and here, you can see two examples without it. And here, you can see one example of it. These two characters melt right into the background, flattening the image. It becomes very hard to tell how much space is there between the two and their background. And since we're working with a 2D medium that's supposed to be portraying a 3D environment, every detail of how one accomplishes this is important. Here, We can see a small bit of lighting striking the back of the visitor's head, rounding it out and giving texture to his hair. This makes him pop and pulls him forward away from the background, giving depth to the scene. These two are probably only a couple feet apart. They could easily reach out and shake hands at any moment. But he looks equally far away from the visitor as the charts on the wall here, despite the fact that they're most likely a minimum of twice the distance away. The visitor, and the background just around him, has depth in the frame, while the rest of the image is flat. One plane of depth. In fact, look at these books right here. Can you honestly tell me if these books are on the desk or on the shelf against the wall? Now, the fact that his hand here is blocked by the books tells us that it's in front and therefore on the desk. But this aside, if we take his arm out of the picture, can you really tell how far back in the frame these books are? On the desk or on the shelf? Now, just to show you something, let's let the camera push in a bit.
Is it in California?
Now you can see that the books weren't blocking his hand. This item here was. The books were actually on the shelf the whole time. It's now that I want to rewind back to the beginning and talk about what many consider to be the most important part of the film and what many others consider to be the least. Dialogue. Instead of reiterating what was said, I'm simply going to follow the trail the words leave and interpret what's said into its underlying meaning or purpose. First, the visitor announces his presence.
Mr. Plainview?
And the main character responds.
Yes.
Are you Daniel Plainview?
Visitor verifies that he's talking to the man in charge and not just an underling, signifying that he himself is not some small-time nobody.
Yes? What can I do for you?
You look for oil.
That's right.
What do you pay for a place that has it?
Well, it depends.
What does it depend on?
On a lot of things.
Here, the visitor is trying to get information out of the main character, who knows this and does everything he can to give nothing. Clearly, he's a stone wall. The visitor decides to take a chance and expunge why he's here.
If I told you I knew a place that had oil where land could be bought cheaply, what do you think that would be worth?
Oh, I think that you should let me know what you know, and then we'll try and work something out.
The visitor, with this extraordinarily tactful phrase, shows us that he's just as calm and calculating as the main character, who responded with something vague yet inviting. The fact that an established character is opening up an ear to this visitor, one who has avoided being tricked by his probing questions, sets up for the audience that the visitor is someone of substance and therefore respect.
Can I sit down?
Please.
What church do you belong to?
At this point in the film, this question reads as a simple getting to know you type of question. An unrelated opener to ease the tension and then segue into business-oriented conversation. After more of the story is revealed, we learn that this question has ulterior meaning. The family he's sending main character to is highly religious and very influential in their area. This question actually acts as a feeler to let visitor gauge main character's reception to such things. If he's anti-religion, the deal is not going to work out. If he's overly religious, specifically of the religion of that small town, then the deal may go through, but not in any way that lets him get money. The main character's opinion of religion is crucial as to whether or not this deal goes through in the eyes of the visitor.
I enjoy all faiths. I don't belong to one church in particular. I like them all. I like everything. Where are you from?
This answer toes the line between the two. Main character essentially states that he doesn't care for religion one way or the other, but he doesn't hold anything against those who do. It's basically saying, I'm not going to answer that question, I'm not religious, but I'm not going to say that to people. And this lets visitor know that he's willing to work with anybody, but won't be taken advantage of by anybody either, which means this deal could go through. There is money to be made. Yet at the same time, visitor is unsure of whether or not he can trust him, which is being made more difficult due to main character's refusal to give up any information of any kind on any topic. But even though he won't divulge anything, he still tries again to get information out of the visitor, who plays the same game and gives absolutely nothing useful as an answer. In fact, he nearly literally states that he won't be that easy to trick into giving up info, but it is 100% for sale.
That would be telling you that's what I want to sell you.
What are you doing in Signal Hill?
The main character tries again to dig for info, and although this question may seem innocuous, It could reveal much about the visitor, which would give a clue as to where he's from.
We have oil and it seeps through the ground. Do you want to pay me to know
But
where
just
it
because
is?
there's something on the ground doesn't mean there's anything beneath it.
With this, visitor doubles down on his sales pitch and even glamorizes it a bit. It's now officially on the table what he has to offer. The main character's first retaliation is to minimize the value of what Visitor's here to sell, but Visitor hits him back with confirmation that he does in fact know what its value is.
Why did Standard Oil buy up land?
Unfortunately, this detail was way too specific, and Visitor may have given up more information than he meant to.
Isn't it in California?
Visitor backtracks and tries to minimize his slip-up. He may not be as experienced as the main character at these sort of negotiations, but he is sharp-witted and highly self-aware.
Maybe.
How much land they buy?
Here, the main character tries to wheedle even more specific information out of Visitor, but Visitor decides to not take any more chances and just shuts him down completely.
I'd like it better if you didn't think I was stupid.
The main character rails back his aggressive digging and decides to ease things up with more casual conversation.
Why'd you come to me?
You just brought the swell in.
That's right.
Yes, so just give me $500 in cash right now and I'll tell you where it is.
The visitor decides to shoot down his attempt at small talk, and so main character just makes him a low offer just to get things moving.
Tell you what I'll do, son. I'll give you $100 now, and if it proves to be a promising lease, then I'll give you $1,000 bonus.
$600.
His low offer isn't bought, but it was never meant to be. A counteroffer is made, and so his intention of getting the ball rolling worked. But despite this, main character still does not fully trust Visitor, and so now that things are moving forward and not as standoffish, he returns to probing.
Just tell me one thing to help me decide. What else have you got up there? What do you grow?
Visitor answers the question, but he holds back as much detail as possible. He's still here to make a sale, he's not making friends. And the three go back and forth with each other. The main character as an associate stops trying to find out where Visitor is from, and instead, they get to work trying to figure out if they can trust him. And he defends himself quickly and easily through their entire round of questioning, all while simultaneously digging for information on them, which they give out just enough to earn his trust, but no more than is required to do that. This fine line on both their parts, that's hard to create.
We have a big ranch, but it's mostly rocks. You can plant things, nothing will grow but weeds. What makes you think it's up?
Is there sulfur around or alkali deposits?
Alkali nearby. I don't know sulfur. Is that your son?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Who are you?
I'm Fletcher Hamilton. Nice to meet you, son. What's your name?
What do you do?
I work with Mr. Plainview.
Throughout this round of questioning, they come to the conclusion that Visitor is trustworthy.
Here's $500, son. You tell me something worth hearing. This money's yours.
Barely stopping to think, Visitor has clearly decided that he trusts them too.
I come from a town called Little Boston in Isabella County. This is us here. Spur Station here at Little Boston. The Sunday Ranch is what you're looking for. There's a sheep trail that takes you there. It's a mile out of town, headed west, not far. Just through a small pass here near the base of the hills. You'll pass a church and just follow the sheep trail.
After they get their information, they ask a few rapid-fire follow-up questions just to verify if they actually trust him enough to let him leave with their money. Even though they've already given it to him, it's still not official, and they're still not 100% confident. This really does speak volumes about what it takes to earn their trust.
Where's Standard buying up?
Here and here.
And your family name is Sunday, yes?
That's right.
How many is in your family?
My father and mother and sisters and my brother Eli.
How many sisters do you have?
2.
What's your name?
Paul.
Does any of your family know about the oil that you say is there?
I don't know. My uncle always said there was oil there, but I don't know what they heard or what they think.
What do you grow?
It's goats. It's a goat farm. I told you, nothing grows but weeds.
Is there water?
It's salty. You drill a well, it's hard not to get salt water. The oil is there. I'm telling you.
At this point, they all clearly trust each other enough to call the deal official. Despite this, Visitor doesn't trust them enough to want to stick around longer than he has to.
I want to go now, so...
You can stay tonight.
No, I want to go now. I want to leave.
The questions this raises are odd. First, what was he afraid of that made him want to get away as fast as possible? Was he worried they would change their mind to take their money back? That they would hurt him in the night? He already told them everything, so he couldn't be worried about them wheedling more information out of him. So what then? While this does work to maintain the air of distrust and suspicion that runs throughout this film, it has no direct purpose on the scene other than to aid to the atmosphere. It's almost practically exposition. The visitor said it because the script wanted him to say it, not because he wanted to say it. Main character responds to this with one last threat, just to drive the point home that he's serious and that double-crossing him would be an idea so bad it would put your physical well-being at risk.
Listen, Paul. If I travel all the way up there and I find that you've been lying to me, I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna take more than my money back. Is that all right with you?
Yes, sir.
All right then.
Nice luck to you. God bless.
And to you, young man.
And with that, the deal's done. From this little bit of dialogue, we can tell a whole lot about every character involved. The visitor doesn't have much, and he needs money now. He's smart, he's calculating, but honest. The main character is also cold and calculating, and while he does have a sense of honor, he's also dangerous and not to be taken lightly. His associate is level-headed and can read him well, and is of a similar mindset, but without the threat of danger. And his son may only be a child, but is not treated like one and takes part in the day-to-day business of the business, and he isn't afraid to stick his head up and ask his own questions. All things considered, the scene moved the plot forward, introduced new characters and story elements, provides deep and required character development, and both looks and sounds visually stunning. This is a masterwork of a scene, and yet it's so subdued that I highly doubt anyone who watched this movie came away with this particular scene as one of their memorable moments. Anyway, that wraps it up for this episode of Cinematic Breakdown. Thank you very much for taking time to watch. I hope at least somebody out there learned something. Please feel free to leave comments and suggestions and critiques of your own, either of this scene as well or of my own critique of it. I'm always looking for ways to improve. So thank you very much for your time, and have a great day.